Mencho was killed by what is known as ATP. I will explain what this is later in this article and video, but first some commentary on the ridiculous out-of-touch clickbait journalism that exists online. I've lived in Mexico for 6 years, in the state of Querétaro, Mexico. I've learned a lot about how Mexico works. Some of the reporting about Mexican violence surrounding the killing of El Mencho has been frankly ridiculous. Just listen to the start of this garbage, a channel with 1.5 million subscribers. Mexico burns why the elimination of El Mencho could turn everything upside down by visual politic.
The most prominent figure in Mexican drug trafficking, the #1 drug lord, has been killed, and now the whole country is in flames.
Mexico is not on fire. Not even the most affected east of the country is on fire. It is a standard Mexican organized crime response to one of their own being killed or captured. Sad for the 80 local Mexican law enforcement and associated local casualties, but not a hair on a foreign tourist's head was touched. That takes discipline. Mexican organized crime are business people first and foremost. MOC, or Mexican organized crime, are deeply embedded into the economy, and harassing or killing or kidnapping tourists is not on their agenda, ever. Except in very localized and extreme cases, usually involving drug deals with tourists out to pay for their trip with a drug deal gone wrong. You can almost guarantee if a couple of tourists are dead, they were doing a drug deal. Mexican organized crime is, again, first and foremost, a business. This is all part of the ritual. It will be business as usual in no time, with a few caveats, because this time it is different. Mexican organized crime knows things are different with this US administration, but I doubt they truly know just how much. If they behave, become more professional, end fentanyl trafficking, and stick ultimately to cocaine, things will go well for them in the long run, and they could slowly be integrated into Mexico's ruling elite, just as happened in the United States. You remember the Kennedys, right? Irish bootleggers, Bronfmans of Canada and the United States. Would you like a list of the respectable US ruling elite who got their start in less than honest occupations? Well, so it will be in Mexico. I mean, you've seen what's been going on in Minnesota with the Democrat Party, right? You think it's any different in the United States compared to Mexico? Gavin Newsom's a crook, Dianne Feinstein, Nancy Pelosi, absolute thieves, charlatans, and organized criminals. And for crying out loud, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, he was laundering drug money in Atlantic City casinos. He's been walking with organized crime since the very beginning. Oh, please, leave Mexico alone. Please, America. You are the kings of oligarchy and organized crime. Why was El Mencho killed now, at this time? It's about silicon, assembly, testing, and packaging, ATP, and fiber optics, primarily. We'll talk about that, but first off, you must understand, the US military is in, on, and around Mexico at every level and in every way. They are deeply embedded in the Mexican military and intelligence apparatus. They had their people on the ground that day exchanging fire. They are making a point, and this is just the first of those points. Every state of Mexico has a ruling oligarchy, just like the United States. Old families, multi-generational. Many of them were old school Portuguese and Spanish Jews expelled by Queen Isabella a long time ago. They have maintained close ties with Israel and Israeli intelligence. Israel and Russia are intimately involved in the Mexican and Colombian drug trade. And what's more, so are a lot of Lebanese Catholics, Lebanese Muslims, Hezbollah, etc. Pious Muslims, one and all. Pious Catholics, one and all. I know personally via the case of Medellin cartel's top original transporter, Roger Reeves. I actually got his book published. I met him in a jail in Perth, Western Australia, would you believe? He was doing 18 to life for 1 ton of cocaine, while the man who was sitting on shore at Shark Bay, Western Australia, waiting for the ton of cocaine to arrive, was born in Israel and was a dual national Colombian and Israeli citizen. The word sicario, or assassin, is a Hebrew word. Think about it. The Mexican crime syndicates are really run out of the United States. To arrest a Mexican or even a Colombian drug lord, it would be wise to go find their top people in Miami, Tucson, Arizona, Los Angeles, or Washington, D.C. and Las Vegas, because that's where the money gets laundered mostly. When's the last time you heard of one of them being arrested? London and Paris get their fair share too, but it is mostly laundered through the financial system of the United States. A lot of it finds its way into places like Silicon Valley Bank, now defunct, where it was laundered into Israel via technology startups. You can thank Mike Gill for that one. US intelligence knows exactly who these people are, where they are at any given time, and who they associate with. They know where the bank accounts are, their LLCs in Arizona, Nevada, and South Dakota, and New Hampshire and Wall Street. They know who their bankers and their runners are. Let's cease with the horse pucky. The United States and the EU and City of London live on the slush fund of daily drug money. Without it, they would instantly collapse. Instantly. The interbank drug money is what keeps the daily bank operating budget going worldwide. Least talked about in the kidnapping of Maduro and takeover of Venezuela by the United States military is the fact that they now control the drug flows and therefore money flows of 30 to 40 billion euros per year out of the ports of Caracas into the ports of Rotterdam and Amsterdam. This happened right before the big Davos meeting. It wasn't an accident. Trump and JD Vance were grinning post-Maduro extraction for reasons the average online alt-media pundit cannot comprehend. They had the EU banks by the balls, and it showed in their very rough and very undiplomatic speeches to the EU and World Economic Forum. It's about the Mexican economy, stupid. Pax Silica. Mexico is a primary partner in the US nearshoring of national security chip production. The United States, Mexico, Canada, or the USMCA review is in July 2026. This is what has spawned the killing and example made of El Mencho and their Lisco new generation organized crime gang. This is just the beginning. The gangs either professionalize, discipline themselves, or they're going to be eradicated state by state, and Israeli companies will move in. They will secure roads, rail, and critical infrastructure, which they are already doing, starting at the US-Mexico border and moving south. All the equipment surveilling the US-Mexico border is Israeli. Elbit systems and a few others, including sensors that sense tunneling. It's all Israeli. Millimeter wave radar, infrared, drones, you name it, all Israeli. When Taiwan Semiconductor and Intel start rolling $100 million loads of precious silicon wafers on high-tech, environment-controlled trucks and trains out of Arizona and into the states of Baja, Sonora, and Nuevo Leon and Monterrey, they will not tolerate cowboy cartels extorting, threatening, or hijacking the trade. They will wipe them out. They are on notice, and this is just the beginning. Guadalajara in the state of Jalisco is also a major hub, right there in the heart of the Troubles. Querétaro, where I live, is also a giant, and I mean giant, hub of the high-tech industry and Israel, with Rad Group having already moved in to secure the critical infrastructure, data centers and low-end chip fabrication facilities, and general industry. This state and this city is closely tied with Texas, and I mean closely. They are sister states. Major fiber optic communication systems have already gone in, linking these states from Guadalajara to Querétaro to Monterrey. They do not want decentralized organized crime, kidnapping of executives or tech company general employees out in the field, driving on roads, or pouring nitric acid down fiber optic inspection manholes and demanding money. It is over. Mexico becomes a first world, respectable organized crime oligarchy, just like the United States and Europe and the UK. Or else. This is big. It's really big. Mexico and the United States are going to be rich. The USMCA is being held in July 2026.
A brand new deal to terminate and replace NAFTA, called USMCA.
It's the United States, Mexico, and Canada Economic Agreement Plan. That is a very important date, and that's why Mencho was taken out. And this is just the beginning. So while Mexico and the United States get rich, their hearts may be less than pure along the way, and Mexico may well become the most surveilled, biometrically scanned, and smart citied place on earth. All Israeli based. This is all Israeli stuff. And no one better tell local Mexicans, because the word Israel is a very, very dirty word here, not just in the United States. But money and investment heal old and new hatreds. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Flying saucers!
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the flying saucers, Tucker. This is a very important video. Why is El Mencho there? The Mexican cartels, or Mexican organized crime, let's not call them cartels. Mexican organized crime I know a little bit about. I've been here for 6 years in Mexico and Querétaro and spoken to a lot of people, and I've gotten used to reading the news cycle. Why did they kill El Mencho? Well, it was about computer chips and fiber optic cables. I'm being very serious. Very simple. Computer chips and fiber optic cables. I would also like to report I'm still alive. I'm still eating cheesecake. Triple shot, cappuccinos, lattes. It's all good. All right. Just stop the horse pucky. That's a pretty standard Mexican organized crime response. However, it's different. This will go on, and the level of violence is really going to depend on who gets in line and who doesn't. But this is changing everything now in Mexico. Mexico will be tamed. It will be full of Israeli smart city surveillance technology. If you know Guadalajara, I did not realize that Jalisco, Guadalajara, is huge. Foxconn is there. They're doing massive AI chip stuff in terms of assembling the service. I had no idea. $500 million of investment, $220 million going in the north near the border, Mexicali, Tijuana, the Sonora and Hormozia. Here in Querétaro, where I live, massive. And Israeli Rad Group is right on in, putting in the programmable logic chips, the industrial controller chips, and taking over Mexico for Pax Silica. They will also be integrating heavily the smart city program. That's why they're going to kill every single cartel or Mexican organized crime member that does not submit and get in line, who threatens the trade, the $100 million loads of chips coming down. You get in line, you mess with the chips, you pour nitric acid on fiber optic cables, there's going to be trouble. And the response will be brutal. They want everyone in line. They want all the organized crime, as they should be, running a business integrated into the economy and ultimately integrated into the Mexican government, just like the American government integrated the Kennedys, bootleggers, the Bromphams out of Canada and the US, just like all the families, Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, Gavin Newsom, good old Joe Biden, and of course, good old President Trump himself, laundering drug money through his Atlantic City casinos, and he did it so badly he went bankrupt anywhere. That's with Roy Cohn. All organized crime, ladies and gentlemen. Mexico is not your piñata, America. You are the biggest organized criminal, of course, with your Israeli, Russian gangsters, big-time Jewish power, political Zionist movement, and the City of London snake that sits within the boundaries. The barbarians are within the gates of the United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, I've just summed it up for you. That might be all you need to hear. El Mencho was killed for computer chips and fiber optic cables. We're going to go into Jalisco. Very important. I did not realize how big it was there. Now I know why Elon Musk was there with SpaceX.
This is a historic moment for Mexico's emerging space industry, which lobbied hard to host the event in Guadalajara.
The goal is to spread the space technology and make it affordable for for everybody.
Well, there you go. Okay, we could end it there, and you can go off and look at some footage of flying saucers.
Flying saucers!
Good old Catherine Austin Fitch yet again on Tucker Carlson talking about the usual scary stuff. It's not going to happen. You know, you can just leave now.
Flying saucers!
Or if you want the details and a lot of links and a lot of stuff that should be researched further, stick around for the next 30, 40 minutes max, and we'll go over all the material and everything, including the AI stuff I generated. All the links or the PDFs is linked to the Patreon, my Patreon account, and of course my Substack. If you're watching this on YouTube, there's a lot of information you're not going to get. Ladies and gentlemen, let us attend.
in cyber. And cyber is a real domain of power. In cyber is a real domain of power.
Actually, but first I want to do this article, which is a very important article. Globes. Globes is a very prestigious and very well-known Israeli journal, high tech. This US tech park in Negev, that's the desert, may have nuclear power plant. I want you to listen very closely. This is actually good news in amongst a lot of bad news. In fact, I got to be honest, I actually not sure if it's good or bad anymore. I sense there's overall good news in terms of Jewish power, and the political Zionist movement is rapidly losing power.
The White House, and I've gone to see Donald Trump.
They're literally pushing for you never to be allowed back into the White House right now.
And I've gone 3 times in the last month. Now, why have I done that? I have no real interest in going to Washington. I don't live there anymore. I'm from there, but I don't go there because I don't want to. But I have gone, first because I really like Trump, and I've known Trump longer than Laura Loomer's been alive, probably, and I've always liked him, and I've always gotten along with him. And Donald Trump ran on the things that I believe, okay? So, and I campaigned for him. These people did not. I did. So I have a relationship with Trump that is very affectionate and honest. And I'm just going to say that out loud. And I thought, I just want to make the point that, no, I like Trump. And Trump certainly doesn't agree with me on everything and certainly doesn't follow my instruction, unfortunately, on all kinds of things at all. But I'm an American who knows him and really likes him and has for many years, and I have a right to go there. So I'm just going to make that point. No, you don't control the White House. I'm sorry. Part of this is illusion. They have a tiny minority position in the United States. Mark Levin represents what, 10% of the American population agrees with Mark Levin. But they're creating this kind of movie set where they're speaking for the majority. They've got an American flag in the background. If you're a true patriot, then you want to send your son to go die for a foreign country and get poorer in the process. Like, it's all insane, but they're creating this illusion that it's real. And my job, I feel like, is to the extent I can, help break that illusion. No, I'm going to walk into the White House, which I've been visiting since I was a child. This is my country. I'm very familiar with this city. I'm very familiar with this building. And I'm very familiar with the guy who occupies the Oval Office right now. And I really like him. And I just want to say that because that alone might help shatter the illusion that they totally control Trump. They do not totally control Trump. That is not true. I've talked to Trump 5 times in the past month. They do not totally control Trump. He listens to them. He listens to others. He listens to Bibi. He also listens to MBS and MBZ. And he listens to a lot of people. They're not totally in control. Sorry. And I just want to remind people of that.
But also that I'm not sure this new power that's emerging is potentially any better. I've got to be honest. They're still building smart cities. They still have plans for automated killing machines. The AI, as I said, is either going to be an incredible, enormous blessing in the long run, or it's going to be the death of all of us. So there's our choice. If we engage in politics, things can be exactly how we want them. Here is some good news. A US tech park in the Negev desert in Israel may have a nuclear power plant. That's not the wonderful thing about it, the nuclear power plant. It's about who's going to run it. This is part of the program I talked about all those years ago in 2012 from a prison. If you remember, I did a article. I hand wrote it, one finger typing with a badly broken arm in Albany Regional Maximum Security Prison on the south coast of Western Australia. And that High Court synopsis, there I talk about Israel as home base for the Antichrist, the AI. That was in 2012. So that's 14 years ago. Not a bad effort. What is important about this article is the MOU or Memorandum of Understanding, in that this new park will be completely run and controlled by the United States with a 99-year lease. Israel never does 99-year leases with anybody, anytime. Not like this. Israel and the US have reached understandings on the construction of a large technological park in the south of the country as part of a strategic cooperation agreement on AI signed in Jerusalem this month. The MOU, or Memorandum of Understanding, signed by the head of the National AI Directorate, Brigadier General Reserve Erez Eskel, and the US Undersecretary of State for Economic Affairs, Jacob Rentboy Helberg Chabad, the gay prostitute, is still there. Sorry, I know this is why I get so depressed. There's Chabad and these gay boys running around, because you can't have a technology uncovering without a bunch of gay rent boys running around with very super rich techno whack job giants. Jacob reveals an ambitious plan to allocate 16,000 dunhams or 4,000 acres, goat after goat, to the US. The park, which will be constructed in the Negev, or listen, in the Gaza Strip border area, what'd I tell you? Wait and see. We'll see how it transpires. Will be called Fort Foundry 1. Wow. Under the MOU, or Memorandum of Understanding, so there's no contract, it's just an understanding, the text of which has reached globes, Israel will grant the US a 99-year lease on the land, although the area will remain under Israeli sovereignty. Day-to-day running will be by the US, which will provide most of the investment. US and Israeli technology companies will work side by side in the park with the aim of setting up a global center for chip production, advanced computing, and AI development. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been around a while, how long have I been talking about this? Okay. Won't make any difference. This will get 2,000 views. Hopefully I'll have enough money to survive. If only I had Tucker Carlson's 5 staff and flying private business jets backwards and forwards to Israel, I really should have kissed the Heritage Foundation ass. But anyway, that's very good news. I want you to take that on board. It's a good sign. I don't know what to say. It's still very worrying. Chabad Lubavitch still front and center. Kushner's front and center being groomed. Let's just keep a close eye and keep things unfolding. Okay, very quickly, we're going to look at these government level stuff. This is why Mencho was killed. The North America prepares for the 2026 USMCA review on potential negotiation. That's the US, Mexico, Canada review. The 3 parties to the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement are beginning domestic consultations ahead of the scheduled 2026 joint review, which could lead to changes in the agreement. Okay, that is a bit like NAFTA. It's very important, very important. And this meeting is in July. That's why Guadalajara and Jalisco is the first state. I did not know how big in Guadalajara, and we'll talk about it, this high-tech AI stuff is being built there. The chips are, of course, being built and assembled. Sorry, I keep looking at the wrong camera. Are being built and assembled, etched, the silicon, the high-end stuff in Arizona. The ATP, which is assembly, testing, and packaging of that silicon chip, it has to be put onto a little board with diodes and wires. It's incredibly detailed in its own. That will continue to be done in the short term and medium term in Arizona for national security reasons and also proprietary knowledge reasons. But still currently so much bandwidth is unavailable right now that guess where those important GPU chips and even ordinary computer, the more ordinary stuff, CPUs, guess where they go? They go on an 8,000-mile trip all the way to Taiwan Semiconductor in Taiwan to get packaged there, ATP there, then they come back. So they're still building the capacity in Arizona to do that stuff. In Mexico, ATP, which is assembly, testing, packaging, remember those words, ATP, assembly, testing, packaging. They're still doing lots of it here in Querétaro, a huge amount up there on the northern border in Sonora, Mexicali, the Tijuana, and Hermosillo is coming. And of course in Monterrey, they do it as well for the automobile industry. So these are lower end chips, but very important. So automobile industry, medical technology, industrial controller chips of every kind, switching washing machines on and off. I did not realize how big that was. This was actually in Mexico. They're fabricating in Mexico, right here in Querétaro, just over that way, 15 kilometers, over towards the aeropuerto, Querétaro aeropuerto. They got a huge technology park there. I didn't realize that they were doing fabrication from start to finish, including ATP, but this is for the lower end stuff. The difference is that they are making the server racks where they're getting the assembled chips being shipped in on trucks and I presume trains in the future, and they bring them in particularly to Guadalajara, where a $500 million investment's been made by Foxconn, which is based in Taiwan. That's the biggest of the big. They make iPhones. Huge. But they're also quasi-Chinese as well, not just, in fact, they're kind of Chinese. It's like they're so into mesh like this. It's hard to explain. It's incredible what you would call the incredible vertical integration of that supply chain in China. That's what made it so powerful. And they were warned and warned not to do it, and Apple and others just kept pouring in there. They knew what they were doing. Tim Cook's going to have a good talking to. But once you understand all this stuff's in Mexico and the massive investment, we're talking $26 billion over the next 10 years. 26 billion. It's huge. That's big money, man, in Mexico. Times it by 3, equivalent in America. That's why they're getting rid of what they would call the people they don't want around. If you're not willing to integrate into the Mexican economy, if you're not willing to integrate into the state and federal apparatus and become very well-behaved organized crime, like in Querétaro, it's totally integrated into Querétaro. Everyone behaves. Querétaro is like this with Texas. They're basically sister states, literally. That's why there's so much high-tech investment here in Querétaro. I knew there was a lot. I didn't realize just how much after all the research I've been doing. It's quite incredible. That's why El Mencho is just the beginning. Everyone gets in line. You're not going to pull up trucks or trains with $100 million worth of chips and start threatening anyone or threatening the driver, kidnapping staff, kidnapping executives. It's all over. You either behave or voila, that's what you're going to get. This is just the beginning. And that big meeting is coming up in July. How much violence there will be going on into the future? I guess that will be up to the local oligarchy. Remember the structure of Mexico. State by state, the federal Mexico City central control is not that great. In some ways, it's a blessing. Look at COVID. Everyone just went, we're not doing all this crap. All right? It's not a strong central state. The unblessing is you get a lot of state-by-state corruption. Gee, sounds like America. And Europe and my home state, Western Australia, it's full of it. I'm going to talk about corruption. At least in Mexico, everyone knows they're corrupt. Everyone knows everyone's corrupt. But it's the same in Europe, Australia, UK, and America. And America especially. I mean, state-by-state oligarchical corruption is just crazy. Crazy. It's just better run and more hidden than it is in Mexico. But as they come in and we start the surveillance state, and Israel is front and center, they're already running Elbit Systems and others. There's other companies as well. Again, all the links, I'm including the PDFs with all the clickable links to all the information. I have double-checked most of that information. I've double-checked. I do not trust the AI. But I have learned a lot about Gemini and the difference between that and Perplexity. Perplexity is way better, but it's very facts-based. But it's damned expensive and you only get 20 deep research questions a month. I went through that in 2 days. It's too expensive. So I've gone back to Gemini, but now I know how to use the best guess inference large language model. Now I know you have to give it explicit instructions. And when you do, you start getting better responses. It really is a science and an art. But what I like about it is I get better and better answers. It's a lot of good value for money. The PDFs are linked into my Patreon and my Substack. And you can go in and see for yourself. This is very intricate financial information, also based on, I mean, I've only been here 6 years, but, you know, I always end up meeting interesting people. I learned a lot about how this country works. It's actually become a very fascinating country to me. The history is way more complicated than I could have ever imagined. Current geopolitics and in the past. Mexico is a very interesting place, very beautiful place too. People, until you come here, you don't realize just how nice it can be and how safe many parts are. Just on that point of where everyone's telling everyone, don't go to all your favorite places. Look, I would suggest you go. Just exercise the usual caution, usual common sense. Don't get involved in drug deals. Don't get involved in drugs. Just take the safe drugs of good old alcohol, which never hurt anyone. That's a joke. I'm a former RN. Alcohol is probably the worst drug out there. But in Mexico, it's state by state oligarchy. Long-term, old families. Some have integrated into the normal economy and are very productive members of society, laundering all their drug money through restaurants and cafes like they do in the West. Exactly the same. It's no different. And they are perfectly respectable. Everyone knows who they are and everyone's respected, senor. You know, it's just business, baby. You know, you remember the Bronfmans and the Kennedys. There you go. Two very famous American families, absolutely up to their necks in death, destruction, and organized crime. Now, respected and revered. Well, the Kennedys, I don't know about the Bronfmans. They just like their cults too. But anyway, it's very family-focused, very oligarchical state by state. Querétaro is one of the most probably best run of all. Even Mexico City is pretty damn nice, pretty well run. I'll give that to Scheinbaum. I must admit, Claudia Scheinbaum did a pretty good job of administering Mexico City and the surrounding areas. I mean, she's a pretty smart operator. It's a shame an American president couldn't be that smart, that articulate, but I don't know. I don't know, America. You tell me. Everyone seems to be a very bad actor over there with a very weird and wacky background. However, I don't think Claudia Scheinbaum ever went to Epstein Island. Oh, America, land of the free and home of the brave. I guess the devil was going to infiltrate you most of all, of course, because you are number one. We love that divinely inspired Bill of Rights and Constitution. So now you're going to see the cleanup, either what we call the Mexican cartels. I hate that word. Do we have Italian cartels, Russian cartels? It almost makes them sound legitimate. I'm very suspicious about whoever first called them cartels. Why don't you call them what they really are? Organized crime and gangs engaging in criminal activity. Just like the hitmen for capital in the United States Marine Corps. Same thing. Just joking, kind of. The bottom line is discipline. They want a disciplined oligarchical crime families. There was no place for El Mencho. There was no place for cowboys. Remember, all of these people that work in Mexico are merely the front men. It's like the half-witted idiots like Elon Musk. It's the same deal. Get rid of El Mencho, put the American-born guy in, probably a CIA asset, who knows. Regardless, there's going to be peace and tranquility under Pax Silica in Mexico. Smart cities, everything. It's already here. Red Group's already here in Querétaro. Red Group is all through the country now. They are integrating their systems into the critical infrastructure. Or their remote monitoring of all the large data centers, huge ones here in Querétaro. It's a central place for data centers in Mexico, which will run ultimately down into Central and South America. Mexico will be the interface between the gringos, the English-speaking North, down, and Mexico is the interface between the North America and Central and South America. Mexico is the interface. Therefore, Mexico will have massive investment and be very, very rich. Will it keep its soul? Yo no sé. I don't know. Probably not. But you never know. There's a revival happening. There's something going on. We know this. So we'll see. I'm kind of optimistic on a deep level, but up here there's just so much circus, ridiculous stuff going on. It's frustrating to watch. I got to watch a clown appear on American TV every 5 minutes. It's hard not to feel a bit dejected and demoralized. It's hard not to feel dejected and demoralized when you have Chabad Lubavitch clowns like a Howard Lutnick or a Jared Kushner appearing, or a Jacob Hellberg. The little gay rent boy with he's another Jeff Gannon. Who remembers Jeff Gannon, George W. Bush's boyfriend? These people have no qualifications. Imagine if this was Mexico. See, Mexico has more damn style than America. Just come on, America. Wouldn't mind if the guy, I don't care if this guy's gay or Jewish, but could he not have any relationship with Chabad Lubavitch and he could please? Could you just be qualified? It's embarrassing. It's utterly embarrassing. How do you defend a circus? That's what you are, America, a damn circus. I got over Pete Hegseth slightly, and then you got to get over this and then that, and then Jody Vance, and you got to get over Marco Rubio, and you go, okay, well, I've got over. And then there's just another layer of stupidity. Naomi, what's her face? That clown from Department of Homeland Security. Kash Patel. Oh, I can't look. I can't look. The whole Epstein stuff. It's clowns. It's a clown show. And maybe that's the plan. What did Adam Curtis tell us? To make it so confusing and so frustrating, you just want to switch off.
So much of the news this year has been hopeless, depressing, and above all, confusing. To which the only response is, oh dear, where nothing really makes any coherent sense. We live with a constant vaudeville of contradictory stories that makes it impossible for any real opposition to emerge, because they can't counter it with a coherent narrative of their own. And it means that we as individuals become ever more powerless, unable to challenge anything, because we live in a state of confusion and uncertainty. To which the response is, oh dear.
Because you want to find these positive stories like that Globes article. That's actually a positive story. Remember I said they might put it in Gaza. They put a huge base in Gaza. That's the end of Jewish power. City of London. They're already fighting, obviously. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. But that's why Mencho was killed, and that's just the beginning. But how bad it gets, I suspect it won't be bad. I suspect everyone's going to get in line. They're going to walk in and they say, look, plenty of money for everyone. There's plenty for everyone. You better get disciplined and under control. You're going to be integrated into the economy, and you're going to become part of the Mexican elite. We don't want any thugs, any half-wits here. We want professional people, and that's the way you're going to see it go. I am kind of happy for the Mexican people in a way, because they've had to endure a lot of violence, particularly in the south of the country. A lot of violence, man. Really bad. That's why I get very angry at Americans and Australians and people in the UK and Europe. You're so freaking lazy. Man, taking up politics in this country can be a very dangerous game. In fact, I wonder why I still can't speak Spanish. It's like I'm blocked. I prayed and God said, because if you learn good Spanish, which you easily could, because I was learning Farsi like that, You will open your mouth. You'll be down at the Palestinian meetings. They have a lot here in Mexico, in Querétaro, in Mexico City, and you are going to get yourself neck deep in Mexican politics. And that's going to be a problem, Brendon. We're hiding you in Mexico. You and the Archangel Michael up in your Martin Luther Castle on the hill. And I get it. If I did, I prayed about it, said, why am I having so much trouble? I can't, it won't sit in my head. It's in and out. Como dice, which is how do you say? So como dice dog. How do you say dog in Espanol? Which is perro, perro with r. Bat is perro, but that's just perro. But perro, you got to get your r, like when you learn Arabic or Farsi. Anyway, so, and it took me 2 weeks. I had to write it on boards just to get that simple phrase which you always learn when you're learning Spanish. Como dice. 2 weeks. That's how hard it's been. God said, because you will get yourself in a big load of trouble if you're yapping your mouth off with fluent conversational Spanish. And that just, that makes perfect sense. But I'll be pleased to see the Mexican people have a little bit of peace and stability. And of course, that's always the game. First, they introduced the violence, the guns, the Fast and the Furious, the Obama stuff. Then they introduced the chaos. The Israeli-Russian gangsters are down here. Hezbollah's down here. Lebanese are here. Huge Lebanese population in Mexico City. Lebanese Catholic. Lebanese Muslim as well, though you won't know it. And a lot of death and destruction. Now the solution is coming in via Red Group and Israeli companies, Elbit Systems. Elbit Systems run the border, all the sensors in the ground for the anti-tunneling system they've practiced in Palestine, and of course the towers which have millimeter wave radar, they have infrared, they have thermal, they have everything. And those corridors, and we're going to talk about them in a minute, those corridors have to be secure because they do not, when you put $100 million worth of GPUs on one truck or one train car, you are not going to drive it through those areas. Some of it will stay within Mexicali, Tijuana, Sonora, Hermosillo. Okay, it's kind of near the border. Monterrey, kind of near the border. And we'll look at the map in a minute. But I didn't realize that a lot of it, it's already being done in Guadalajara, right next to Puerto Vallarta, Jalisco, the state of Jalisco, right in the center of it. That's not an accident. That's why Mencho was killed. It's just the beginning. I think we will see a rapid de-escalation, I think, but I don't know. I'm not an expert. But I think everybody's going to get the message. Get in line, plenty of money for everyone. You're going to have to behave or else. Because Americans are not just giving intel, they're on the ground, they are pulling triggers, they're absolutely like neck deep in with Mexican intelligence and the Mexican military. Okay? Don't believe this stuff that Americans are not on the ground. They are on the ground killing. And this is just the beginning. And trust me, the Mexican organized crime, the cartels, are terrified of the US military. Terrified. Now, if they're off their heads on meth and coke, they won't care. They'll fight to the death. But they're terrified. Make no mistake. They hear the US military is on the way, they start packing. And why wouldn't you? Who can stand against the beast? And that's what's going on right now. And it's all about this. North America prepares for the 2026 USMCA review on potential renegotiation. We can end it here. We're not going to, but we could. That is why Mencho is dead. It's about computer chips and it's about fiber optic cables. There are other things to consider. Things like, down here. Things to consider are also this. Getting nitric acid. I remember I knew some people at Perth, the Special Forces base is there, SAS, Special Air Service is based in Perth, Western Australia, my hometown. Knew a lot of personnel, formally and informally. Friends, we used to work in nightclubs. His old man was a chief instructor. They'd bring in all the Singaporean Special Forces. We'd get drunk on black sambucas. Knew everyone. Everyone knows people in the SAS there. It's like living in Norfolk and knowing someone in Navy SEALs or living in San Diego and knowing someone in the Marine Corps. Hardly anything new. But I remember they had to go up and practice critical infrastructure protection. They're up in North Queensland. And they literally just went up and poured nitric acid down the mine hole and burnt out all the fiber optic cables. They do not want cartel members who want to extort, kidnap executives, kidnap staff who are out in the field. They'll be setting up microwave towers. They're setting up and installing and fixing and maintaining fiber optic cables, massive fiber optic cables, linking Querétaro to Monterrey. We'll talk about that in a minute. They do not want them threatening or giving an example of pouring nitric acid down a manhole inspection hole and burning out all the fiber optic cables. It's not going to happen. That's why they're sending the message now, before the July meeting of the North America pairs for the 2026 USMCA, United States, Mexico, California, Canada review for potential renegotiation. Guadalajara, the soccer, all the rest. Right there in Jalisco. Now you know. That's why Mencho was killed. That's that one. Then, of course, we have the 2024 US-Mexico High-Level Economic Dialogue Mid-Year Review. Then we have the US Department of State and Inter-American Development Bank. That's a very important concept. We'll go over that. Collaborate on semiconductor initiative in the Western Hemisphere. It's all about Mexico. New partnership with Mexico to explore semiconductor supply chain activities. US Department of State International Technology Security and Innovation Fund, the ITSI Fund. Very important concept. There's 5 basic concepts to understand, and we will go over them in a minute. The Brookings Institute, building a long-term North American semiconductor ecosystem, all linked below. Sorry, I keep forgetting. And of course, we have the good old Canada and Mexico, a moment of strategic choice. That is also a very good article worth reading. There's a wet rag London central banker hanging out with Claudia, who Claudia loves. Claudia, of course, does not like having to deal with Donald Trump, but that's just the way it is. No one likes dealing with Donald Trump. All linked below. Please read if you're interested, and you will understand. It's boring. We need a bit of UFO stuff. Tucker?
Flying saucers.
There you go, flying saucers. Now for the PDFs. Well, actually, let's first go to maps. Okay, here is our map of Mexico. There's the Baja La Paz. Nice place. I enjoyed it there. Up here is Ensenada. I stayed there for 2 weeks, and Roger drove down with Mari. I nearly forgot Roger's wife's name. It's been a while. And that's where those 2 Australian servers and an American were killed. Doing a drug deal. Don't do drug deals, people. But I am over here. I am here in Santiago de Querétaro, right in there. And over here, where are you, my friend? Here. Parque Industrial Bernardo Technological Innovation, right there. They're all there. Amazon, Microsoft, Google Cloud, you name it. It's in that giant industrial park right there. Huge fiber optic cables, which go up to Nuevo Leon. There's the US border. There's Laredo, Texas, and there is Monterrey. Very important place. I was up there last year. I had to go there for my biometrics. They've got huge developments going on there, including monorails from the airport, and so does Querétaro. Down here is Mexico City, a 4-hour bus drive away. Beautiful Mexico City, very surprising. And just to the east is Guadalajara, which is a huge, 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 huge assembly area for the chips. The chips are already completely made. They have to be assembled into server racks. That's the big biggies. $500 million invested, 200 million more to go. And over here is Puerto Vallarta. Right there. I knew someone, a Canadian lady who lived just down the road from El Mencho's sister. She knew quite a few of them. It's no big deal. It's all in society. Everyone knows who they are. Just be polite and respectful. They're not going to cut your head off. She'll be very polite, very, very welcoming, and probably buy you a beer. But just don't get involved in organized crime. Simple as that. And there is Guadalajara, where, of course, the big soccer, and Mexicans love their soccer, their football. So that's that area there. That's where most of the action was happening, Jalisco. There you go, Santiago de Querétaro. So if we go up to the north, Monterrey has a huge industrial park. Very, very important. They do a lot of automobile stuff, of course, automobile chips, manufacturing, washing machines, you name it. It's huge, of course. We're up here into Chihuahua. It's very important. Ciudad Juarez. Yes, that Juarez.
There she is. The beast. Juarez.
Sicaria Juarez. They've got a huge factories and assembly points there as well, which will be expanded in Chihuahua. Hermosillo, I went there after I did my trip all up through Sinaloa, got ripped off and harassed by the cartel there pretending to be border staff. I was so stupid, I thought it was a normal tax. No, it wasn't. I got off that bus, I'd had enough, and I got into Hermosillo, and I jumped on a plane and flew up to Tijuana because I had had enough of that bus trip. Whew, that was 2021, sorry. The height of all the COVID and stuff. Those are the most important points. Hermosillo is also getting, at that point there, is also getting a huge amount of development. Mexicali, Tijuana. In fact, I think in Mexicali, that's where they did the Apple IMAX in the 1990s, but they were so scared to stay there and so feared kidnapping that they would sleep on the American side of the border and then go to work in the day in very crappy old cars. And they don't want that anymore. So the whole parts of this border, including Tijuana, believe it or not, are going to have a lot of security put in them. And Israel is here to help. Elbit Systems and others, Rad Group, critical infrastructure stuff, remote monitoring services, and of course Elbit Systems and others. So Sonora, that state, Hermosillo, Chihuahua, very important also, Nogales on the border there, of course Mexicali, Tijuana, and over here, Monterrey, extremely important. Down here, Santiago de Querétaro, they do a lot of chip fabrication, and it is the number one point for Amazon Web Services, Google, Microsoft, you name it, it's all there in Querétaro. It is the second administrative center for Mexico. It will largely replace Mexico City, the government there, and they want to move it all to Querétaro. Of course, all the senators and politicians will stay in Mexico, but a lot of the back-end stuff via huge fiber optic cables will be handled in Querétaro. If you're in Querétaro, get some land as fast as you can. I've been talking about this for years. Over here, Guadalajara, that's the biggie. I had no idea how big that was, and that's why Elon Musk was over there announcing SpaceX in 2016. That was a big deal. So now you see it all coming together. Let's go over here to the PDFs. When we talk about ATP, it's very important. The big stuff, or the really high-end stuff, particularly the NVIDIA GPU stuff, that is not being done in Mexico, the high-end stuff, the Intel chips and the AMD CPU chips and the GPU chips of NVIDIA. That continues to be done in Phoenix, Arizona, but they're building it out. They've only just started to build it out. $7 billion of investment, it's huge. That stuff is super high security, super detailed, super stuff. You've got to do a lot of training. I believe it will eventually make its way to Mexico over the next 10 years or longer, as Mexico is turned into a very peaceful, fully surveilled smart city state. Mexicans will probably love it. We know where it goes in the end. However, there is a lot of that ATP stuff for the smaller stuff, very important. The car industry, microwave ovens, washing machines, industrial switches. They're actually built from scratch, etched in Mexico, and assembled, tested, and packaged in Mexico. Querétaro is number one for this. I did not know that. I knew it was here, but it is number one in Mexico. Monterrey is very close, and some in up on near the border in Mexicali, I believe. However, the big bickies and the biggest investment is not in ATP. It's the high-end assembly of the rack. So they get the finished GPUs with hundreds of millions of dollars worth coming down on road and rail. They don't want that interfered with by anyone. And they're building that up, and they're sorting out the cartels, Mexican organized crime, getting everything in line for this massive infrastructure build-out. They don't want to deal with these people anymore. They wanted them to do cocaine only, fundamentally, but they'll first get rid of fentanyl, then they'll get rid of methamphetamine, and then they'll stick with cocaine, good old-fashioned organic cocaine, until they're ready to wean the US economy and the world economy off the slush fund of drug money. That's a big problem, obviously. So the differentiation between ATP and system assembly, Foxconn's Mexican expansion, there's a very good video I've linked below showing this assembly stuff going on in Mexico, some of it. But we can look at an article just briefly now. This article is linked below. This is a very important article to understand everything. Foxconn, that's China/Taiwan. Foxconn, that's the biggie, man. They're the biggest of the big. Foxconn and NVIDIA to build world's largest GB200 superchip plant in Mexico. They're not building the chips. They're not etching the silicon. They're not even doing assembling or ATP. What they are doing is getting the finished chip and turning it into a giant server rack, assembling the circuit boards, assembling the memory, putting it into the racks, the heating and cooling system. So this is from October 2024. Foxconn, the Taiwanese global leader in contract electronics manufacturing, has announced a major investment to build the world's largest plant in Mexico. This is the world's largest plant in Mexico, dedicated to assembling NVIDIA's GB200 superchips, making a milestone in the tech industry. That is Guadalajara. That is the state of Jalisco. That's why El Mencho is dead. No funny business. Too serious. National security. They are building them directly for Stargate. That's why everyone's getting dealt with. If you have friends or family in organized crime in Mexico, and there's a lot of people, it's different. It's not seen as a gangster, it's seen as a business. Tell them, everyone get a suit, behave. And that's what's coming. That's a very important article to understand. Once I saw that, now it all makes super sense. But let's go back to this article. Again, everything is linked below. The actual PDFs I'm using that I created with that Gemini AI are here. The differentiation between ATP and system assembly, Foxconn's Mexican expansion. I got most of the links via checking every single link. And when you go to the back of the page, you'll find all the links there. And you better double check them, because if you don't know how to use Gemini AI correctly, if you've got money, use Perplexly. It's much better. But if you're using Gemini, it's cheaper and it's reasonably good. You've got to give it very specific instructions. So while the primary die packaging, the true ATP process for NVIDIA's advanced chips, remains firmly entrenched in Arizona, the subsequent phase of the technology value chain, system-level assembly and server integration, you saw the video before, is moving aggressively into Mexico. It is vital to distinguish between ATP, which involves encasing the microscopic silicon die into a functional chip housing, and system assembly, which involves soldering those completed chips onto motherboards and integrating them into massive server racks. The latter is where Mexico is capturing unprecedented capital investment driven by the global boom in artificial intelligence. That is why El Mencho is dead. The Guadalajara mega project in the state of Jalisco, where it's all been burning, the cars have been burning. Crucially, the flagship facility for this operation is not located on the border. Foxconn has chosen Guadalajara, located in the interior Mexican state of Jalisco, as a site for the historic investment. I'm going to leave it at that. The planned capacity of the Guadalajara plant is staggering. It is projected to assemble 20,000 servers per month, equating to 240,000 highly advanced AI server machines annually. That is a lot of chips, and it's a lot of money, because they're 30,000 a pop. 30,000 a pop. Do the math. Each load's probably worth $50 million. They're not having any effect. That's the Ciudad Juarez expansion. That is on the border. That's $241 million. That's that Juarez you saw in Sicario. That's all being done up. Foxconn has invested over $500 million in the state of Chihuahua, occupying it's huge, $500 million. The final destination for Mexican assembled AI hardware project Stargate. The GP2000 NVL72 data center servers currently in production in Mexico are not intended for local Latin American consumption. They are being manufactured almost exclusively to satisfy the insatiable demand of the United States technology sector, and specifically for Stargate project. There is the article, and we will keep going down. Validating the border postulate for mature nodes, the Baja California legacy cluster. That's what I was arguing. Are they going to put that 200-mile thing? Well, not exactly high security border. They are. They're going to run it down through the channels, through the routes. It'll all be surveilled. It'll all be Elbit systems. It'll all be tightly controlled. But you will see a very highly secure and probably safe border. So the bleeding edge advanced packaging remains in Arizona, and complex system assembly thrives in the Mexican corridor, and it goes into all the companies. The success of the Baja California cluster, which is Mexicali and Tijuana, just across the border, is highly viable, provided the focus remains on mature nodes such as power management, integrated controllers, and radio frequency components. And that's all the stuff for cars or washing machines. Still very important. It makes the world go round. Plans Sonora, the state of Sonora, constructing the next generation border technology hub. If Baja California represents the legacy footprint, so that's the older stuff, but still very important, of border ATP, again, assembly, testing, packaging. The state of Sonora represents the most ambitious attempt to construct a ground-up next-generation semiconductor and high-tech ecosystem directly adjacent to the US border, sharing a massive geographic boundary with Arizona. And they're going to, it's all being done. Cloud is shine-bound. They got all the Mexican federal government involved. Resolving the energy constraint. They've got a huge solar project going in. Plenty of sunshine. Might be effective because they've got so much sun. But we're getting to the good bit, the smart cities. Now listen to this. Oh, here we go. Smart city infrastructure. I need some music. Dun, dun, dun. Smart city infrastructure and Foxconn collaboration. Here we go. Let's begin. To overcome the civic and infrastructural deficits that historically plague many border towns, factors that deter high-value semiconductor investments, Sonora is partnering with global technology leaders to modernize its urban environments. In early 2026, Governor Durazo signed a comprehensive memorandum of understanding with Foxconn. You got to understand how big Foxconn is. That's who makes your iPhone. They are huge. You would not believe how big they are. To deploy the company's smart city platform across the state. Leveraging Foxconn's extensive experience with digital urban governance in Kaesong, Taiwan, this initiative aims to utilize artificial intelligence, of course, and data-driven decision-making to optimize government efficiency, improve security. Israel will be heavily involved, guaranteed, and modernize transportation logistics across key Sonoran cities, including the state capital of Hermosillo, the border hub of Nogales, San Luis Rio, Colorado, and the port city of Guaymas. The civic modernization is a necessary prerequisite for attracting highly sensitive, high-value semiconductor and electromobility investments, which require pristine, secure operational environments to function optimally. Furthermore, Foxconn is committed to collaborating on Mexico's project to construct a homegrown electric vehicle, further cementing Sonora's role as a center for advanced manufacturing. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we could talk on and on and on and on. Let's get up. That's an old one about nearshoring, but we'll put that up as well. The 5 pillars of US-Mexico semiconductor cooperation. These are the points you will need. The ITSI Fund, International Technology Security and Innovation Fund. You can see there what it is. You also need to understand the H-led Semiconductor Action Plan. This is all to do with the US and Mexico. The OECD Semiconductor Ecosystem Assessment. The Master Plan 2024-2030. Okay. So it's attracting foreign direct investment, specialized workforce training. That's a big one. When they get them in the next 10, 20 years, they'll, of course, be doing the very advanced ATP packaging and guarantee in the border areas of Mexico once they are fully secure. Infrastructure and logistics, regulatory simplification, supply ecosystem creation. So there we go. It's all linked below. All the resources are linked below, and you will understand why El Mencho is dying. I'm caught between, I'm happy for Mexico. There's things I hate about Mexico. There's things I love about Mexico. It's pretty much it's the same wherever you go, wherever you are. I'm pleased to see that maybe they'll get some peace and security, and hopefully in the south of the country as well, where the worst of the killings take place, the political killings. It's a double bind where you have these state oligarchies which are decentralized and kind of good because they just would not enforce the COVID stuff. They did enforce some things, of course, some masking, some, but really the police were just not interested. They've got worse things to worry about than that stuff. So that decentralized stuff is kind of good. On the other hand, the lack of that centralized control means that, the state oligarchies are extremely corrupt. And they are extremely, and it lowers investment because they start demanding bribes. And everybody wants a bribe, and it starts raising the cost. People start getting kidnapped. And that's where they said, no mas, basta. It's not happening. And Mencho goes, everybody get in line. It's just too easy to pour nitric acid down and destroy a fiber optic cable. And it just cannot happen because it's not just about Mexico. It's about this new control, Pax Silica control mechanism running down through Mexico into Central and South America. That's what's happening. I'm not telling you it's good or bad. I'm just telling you that's what's happening. You know, say, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I kept telling people there's two groups of pedophile. The former group, Jewish power, political Zionism, the EU hoof you are evil. They want to kill us. They're just evil. They're horrible. On the other hand, the new Heritage Foundation and the Trump whole phenomena, the cult of Trump, and of course, and they are fighting. I'm telling you right now, the BB, they hate him. Trump is not doing what BB says. It's not happening. But I'm not sure if that's any better. What I said is unfolding is unfolding. Do you remember how many years ago I told you they would have to invade Israel? They may well do that. Depending on how Mexican organized crime and local state organized crime react on the ground. Because there's also a nationalist component. It's not just money and greed and power. There's a nationalist component. Mexicans are pretty nationalist. Pretty nationalist about things. When they start working out, and I'm telling freaking everyone, once you get Red Group in here, and I'm not even going to tell you that having Israel in your infrastructure is automatically bad. Just remember that I was warned about this in 2005 by 2 Israeli Jews, one Australian Jewish Israeli citizen, one American Jewish Israeli citizen. They warned me about Leon. They warned me about all this stuff. I didn't click on it. It took me a long time. They contacted me after that, then complained I wasn't meant to make an international incident. And I said, well, I'm not sure what you expected me to do with the info, talk about it around a barbecue. But anyway, and of course, the Israeli press from 2008 on has been warning the Israeli press non-stop about what's going on, which was what? The Kissinger multipolar world order, Rothschild, City of London, David de Rothschild, Evelyn de Rothschild in Europe, all that stuff. Gerhard Schroeder, that's the perfect picture. That picture of Gerhard Schroeder with Rothschild's perfect. Gerhard, of course, best friends with who? None other than Vladimir Putin, which is who? Kissinger, Yevgeny Primakov doctrine. Okay. There's a very strong nationalist element in Mexico that could kick up. Communist movement here is pretty big as well. I don't know what to say. La Raza movement. If and when they catch on about what's going on, they might kick up a stink. By then, the Israelis will, of course, who know how to deal with that sort of stuff, counterinsurgency, don't they? Don't they? A lot of the smaller towns, the nice towns where all the decent, respectable drug dealers go to retire, have got huge 70-foot poles. They're everywhere, 25, 50 of them in a town of 50,000 people. 70-foot tall, big 8K movable camera at the top for facial recognition, number plate recognition, and 3 cameras in the mid. What do we need from the Trump administration? We need guarantees. I mentioned it once that I heard. Are they going to repeal the Patriot Act in time? Are they going to sort out what's going on? The drug trade, the drug money laundering trade, the violence accompanied with the illegality of drugs, not the drugs themselves. As people say, I don't have a drug problem, I have a money problem, trying to get the money. When Mel Gibson gets busted, beating his Russian-Israeli hooker wife with his Israeli Defense Force bodyguards, high on his head, off his head on cocaine and alcohol, he doesn't go to jail, he goes to rehab, Betty Ford Clinic. He's got money. As people say, I don't have a drug problem, I have a money problem. You'll hear that all the time in jail. Don't have a drug problem, I have a money problem. The vast majority of the violence and the thieving and all the associated criminality is to get the money, to get the drugs. We need to fix the whole drug problem, the whole drug issues. The war on drugs is a war on people, number one. The addiction of drug money, liquid drug money flows into banks, flushing backwards and forwards between banks worldwide. That's got to be addressed. We've got to address a lot of stuff, but that can be addressed very quickly. And they've allowed things to get out of control. Why? So the average person will go, all this chaos is too much. Fabian socialist trick. Let's fix this now. Just give away all your rights. We're going to automate systems. Do you have a few killing machines flying around? Hope you don't mind. The judges are corrupt. Let's automate the court system. Oh, the police are corrupt. Let's automate the police system. That is the bad thing we need to avoid. And I believe with education, PowerPoint presentations, they're coming. And people engaging in the political process, it doesn't have to be the worst case scenario. I'm not saying that Bible prophecy doesn't unfold. I just believe you should fight for what's right. If you remember our Bible, and you forgive me if my memory does not serve me right, in the old Jewish Old Testament or Tanakh, you will hear about good old Sodom and Gomorrah. And remember the argument where they said, Lord, 5 good men, 10 good men, they were negotiating with God. He said, please don't destroy if we find righteous men and women within the thing. They were arguing with God. We should also argue with God. And so don't do it. Let's get better. Let's improve. Okay, ladies, I hope you understand what El Mencho was about. Jalisco, new generation. That is just the beginning. How much violence there will be, That's going to depend on people's reactions. That's going to depend on communication. But I would suggest everyone's going to get in line. There's going to be plenty of money for everyone. Young men, particularly the young men, Claudia Scheinbaum has a hard-on for the women, yes, but what about the young men who are causing a lot of the violence? They need jobs. They need hope. It's kind of hard not to kind of feel good for Mexico if you live here and have some affection for the place and the people. It's not all bad. You kind of want them to have a lucky break because they need it. And of course, America, you need the luckiest break of all. Because if we cannot free America, we cannot free the world. Am I optimistic? That's really difficult. Yes, I'm optimistic, but in another way I'm not, and I'll tell you why. Lucifer comes as an angel of light, and it's very subtle. The end comes very subtly. It sneaks up on you. I believe ultimately there will be some kind of crisis. Not now. Everyone's the crisis is coming. Crisis is coming. Tucker, and she's got Catherine Austin Fitz on again, the CIA asset, and it's like, oh, that's not it. It's going to be a very slow process. Maybe I'll live to see it. Maybe you'll live to see it. But I assure you, if you sit around till 2030, 2040, worrying, you're going to be very upset with yourself. Truly, you're going to be very, very upset with yourself. I suggest you get in and be as positive as you can. Remember, the devil comes, makes you very anxious and very depressed. Watch out. Watch out anyone pushing this the end is nigh. Here come, clickbait stuff. Look at the reporting of what was going on in Puerto Vallarta and Jalisco State and Guadalajara and associated areas. The reporting was ridiculous. The end was, I'm sorry, I've been here 6 years. I've seen this before. They burned the cars. Not a hair on a single foreign tourist's head was touched. Not a hair. Just come to Mexico. Just exercise caution. That's all you have to do. It is outrageous. This is pressure. Remember the 2026 July meeting, United States, Mexico, Canada. This is pressure and leverage on the government. That's what it's about. It's also pressure and leverage on the more recalcitrant, the more belligerent, because a lot of Mexico hates America. Hatred. There's a hatred. 30% of the population despises America with a passion so great you have no idea. And that includes into the political class. And they will need convincing as well. Could be a very exciting time. God bless America. God bless Mexico. And I just hope and pray that we've got to get Europe free. Europe must be free. And I don't notice that yet. And I can't see it happening anytime in the future. Right now, the EU continues to puff along. Let's see if there's not something in the works in the very near future that will give us some hope. Because right now, only the Netherlands is on Pax Silica. And who in their right mind signs up to allow giant Israeli military intelligence companies to run your critical infrastructure? I'm sorry. There's a place for Israel. It's a very important geostrategic hub. It cannot be abandoned. The US must be there, because if the US vacates, I'll tell you who's moving in, Russia and China. So you better believe it. You better believe the United States must stay in that region. And it could rule very easily and very respectfully by beating the living shit out of people like Benjamin Netanyahu, Likud, and these scumbags. Deport them all back to Russia, every last one of them. Every last one of them. Keep security clear, the clever ones, because there's pretty smart people from Russia and Ukraine there. By all means, security clear them. Get them working on some stuff. Agricultural stuff, water reclamation, solar, energy, but no military stuff. No clandestine stuff. If they've got talent, they go to the US and they do it all there. And they are anally probed when they go in, and they're anally probed when they go out. High security. Clearances have to be reassessed. And the United States looks like it's about to occupy and make Israel into a protectorate. Rome wasn't built the day. The war in Iran, there's no war in Iran. There will only be slaughter in Iran. And it's a very delicate thing, because I do not want to push Iran and fracture it. A lot of people say they'll fracture it. No, they don't want to fracture Iran. Again, I tell you, the logical pick is former President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, a hardliner, has respected the hardline, but he's also a reformer. He's not stupid. The economy went down because they destroyed the economy, because he was too smart for a lot of people. That guy's very smart, very switched on. He's willing to talk. He will come into the arms of the United States, but it's got to be done very gently, because they need someone to control the stands and control that region. And they do not want it broken and fractured into 1,000 pieces. I know some people who would like that, and it's not the United States. It's a very delicate time. The military stuff with Iran is not really the problem. That's easy. Man, Lockheed, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, they're going to just make Iran's a virgin. She's drugged. She's on the bed. She's helpless. There'll be a war. All right. The Straits of Hormuz are vital for Iran too. They don't get any income from China and India with their oil. It's not a one-way street here. I'm not sure why they keep playing this game. I've got to believe it's theater. They're going to fire their ballistic missiles into Saudi, UAE, into the oil fields. Yeah, they'll be fixed. They'll fix them quick. Not a problem. I don't know. It all smells to me as theater. I believe it's going to be resolved actually quite peacefully. It must be resolved. And, of course, there's nothing wrong with the news cycle given all the Epstein stuff that let's ramp it up a little bit. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Because Iran has nowhere to go. It's an interesting time. It's certainly an interesting time. Remember this map? Because that's ultimately the map the United States wants to some degree, a version of that, ideally with the United States firmly implanted in occupied Palestine. 60% of the Israeli population will welcome the United States as literal liberators. 40% of the population must be removed, sent back to Russia and other places. A lot of GRU assets need to be weeded out. We're also listening to a great audio book on Putin's friends. Wow. Kissinger's in there, Primakov, the whole thing. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. You'll really understand what's going on and the danger from their old Russian intelligence apparatus. God bless the Russian people, Ukrainian people. They've suffered enough. The Eastern Bloc suffered enough in Europe. We got to free the EU, free the European people, get the United States and the European people together, and we free the world. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'll catch you later. Talk again very, very soon. Hold on, Fez. Jump a leggy, jump a nanty. Hasta luego.